Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well. I'm sorry that I've not been in the group much this week. I can't remember when the last time I was in, but I've been so busy. So I wanted to talk about the eternal child in your spiritual business and what the light aspect of the eternal child and the archetype of the eternal child and the shadow aspect. Okay, so I work a lot with, so those of you who don't know me, who may be new to the group, I studied archetypes for over 25 years anyway. I'm someone that studied a lot of different types of healing, therapy, coaching and counselling and psychotherapy. And I started using archetypes not just in my own healing journey and in my work, but also in branding and marketing, particularly from an energetic perspective, and looking at it from a healer's perspective. Okay, so I'm highly empathic, highly intuitive, so I tend to see things. So my intuitive gift comes as visionary often and an unknowing. I'm also, because I'm so highly empathic, I feel things. So when I'm working with clients, I tend to get a lot of intuitive information about where that client is and elements of their energy, right, which can really be helpful when you're helping people really identify more of their purpose, where they're at in their journey, but also aspects of them, their energy, the traits that is the magnet and the attraction for their ideal clients and soul clients. So, and also what I'm fortunate to be able to have is I'm someone who highly invested in a lot of spiritual and different types of modalities for myself, but but also in training. So you tend to, when you've invested highly in lots of different things, you have a wider perspective of what's in the market, right? And you also see things from the consumer's point of view, right? So that's why I seem to kind of ended up in the job that I'm this part of my area of work, because I have two sides to my business. But one of the things that I like doing is helping people explore their main archetypes and their power archetypes, not just their brand and their marketing, but the actual power archetype that's at the core of them, right? And when you understand your power archetype, it can help you really it's like almost like you have more confidence and more sureness in what part of your purpose is and your biggest strengths. And because lots of people often struggle to see their biggest strengths, is on a human level we seem to be very distracted by everybody else's gifts or what we would like, rather than the beautiful gifts that we already have and are the core of us, right? And that's why I feel that archetypal work can help you in a new level. Now, I've studied I've studied the work of Carol Pearson, I've done a lot of work with Caroline Myss, and I've done courses with Robert Hotto, other than Carol Jung and archetypal marketing courses, right? And there's lots of different facets to archetypes, but we also have the inner child, right? And we all know as healers, anyone's a healer, a therapist, coach, knows the elements of the inner child and how we have to approach the inner child in a kind of safe and effective way. But we also know that we all have light and shadow aspects, and they show up in all different ways in our life, in our relationships, and in our business. So today I'm going to talk about the eternal child, and I'm just using Mrs. Carr, just because that's what I picked out this morning, right? And I'm going to talk about what I believe is some of the most powerful aspects of the eternal child in a spiritual business, right? But what can be the shadow aspects that can show up. So if we think about the eternal child in many ways is the child that doesn't want to grow up. It's like Peter Pan, right? So there's an aspect of us all that is pure, that is always there, the child. And if you think about a child has this sense of awe. And if you think about what we call the magical child archetype, or even the innocent child archetype, there's a purity and a sense of awe and magic, right? And that is a very powerful archetype, particularly for those of you who have got strong alchemist archetype traits, okay? Now, in my Soul Purpose to Soul Client Magnet course, one of the things is I help businesses explore their archetype and also create a business around their archetype and around their products, and so it's all aligned, right? But it's so easy for businesses to focus on the shadow elements and build a business around the shadow elements, or other archetypes that they fancy being, but it's not actually their power, right? So let's think about it from the inner child's perspective, right? And a child that can be insecure and in their childlike form, first of all, there's a pureness comes through with a child. In some aspects, the child is in awe of everything and thinks it's fantastic. A child tends to, when the child is, first comes into the world, the child has this freshness and there's not that distortion. And they look at things from purer eyes until the layers of the onion of distortion and beliefs and other people's stuff is put against that child. So we all fall into different patterns in childhood to survive. And some people fall into the shadow elements of the eternal child that they don't want to grow up. When they start seeing things that they might feel too painful or they don't want to face it, they want to live like Peter Pan, not to take self-responsibility or not do the things that seem really hard. They just want to do the things that a child enjoys doing. So it's like a child, they want to play, they want to have maybe things that they like to eat, but they may not want to do school, might want to do. So there's that element of not growing up. So the light element is the beauty and the awe and the magic and the purity, right? And us being able to tap into the purity of our gifts and that awe and that magic and that ability to see the magic and the beauty and the playfulness in the world and in our own work, to be able to approach our work. And I don't mean from not, because obviously there's some types of work is more kind of, you have to be a wee bit more serious than others, because particularly when it's to do with people's well-being and their spirituality, there's a sense of responsibility. But what I mean is, you are able to flow. A child is able to be. A child is very much in the flow and is not having to make too much happen because they're in the zone. And I'm very much about helping people getting into their zone of genius. So when you can tap into the eternal child, of the inner child element that is very much about play and I don't mean too much play. What I mean is that energy, it's the zone, it's that they do things that they're naturally they find easy, that they gravitate. The pure child and the eternal child, which is in its purest form, will gravitate towards those things that they're more naturally attuned to do, right? But the shadow element of the eternal child is that element of not want to grow up, not to take self-responsibility, and to avoid anything that you don't want to do. So that can show up in your business and things like, and I'll give you an example. I used to enjoy doing my accounts, but for some reason this year I've got to do 2 sets of accounts for different reasons, and there was one aspect of it, but it's not straightforward. I had to go and do the other, and I left it to last minute. So my accounts were due in by the 31st, and it was last week I was really pushing to get these accounts done. And I'm going to be honest, I started feeling a bit stressed about it, even though I'm a stress management expert. We all have certain things that were starting to trigger me a bit, and I had to step back and say, right, okay, come on. I think just because it was that time, you know what it's like if you leave something to last minute. And I normally don't leave those type of things to last minute, but I did. And I realised it was the eternal child in me that did not want to take self-responsibility and wanted to do the things that I really enjoy in my business, that I absolutely adore in my business, and avoid the things that we have to do in a business to be responsible, right? And it's so important in business that we face those things in a business that we either don't want to do, we're trying to avoid, or we convince ourselves we don't need to do it, right? And it's like anything in life, there is things that we really enjoy doing, but there is things as the responsible individual is, or to make things easier for ourselves in the long run, it's good to get it out of the way, right? But think about it as a child. A child, you know, I remember as a child, I was brought up, I'm the eldest of 9, right? So my parents, you only got rewards for anything until you had done the work or you did certain things. I was brought up in a family where my dad had his own company, and we all worked from a very young age doing things to do with his workplace. And we tended to have to work for lots of things that most other children didn't do, and it wasn't a bad thing, because what you recognised was you got a reward for what you did, but you had to do it first. Sometimes we have a society now where there's this because we can receive things at the press of a button. It's that instant gratification thing, where in some ways it's insane that, you know, you don't even have to have the money. You can stick it on a credit card and there's no kind of working in a way towards it. It's almost like you've got it even though you've not worked for it. And very much that can be the eternal child gratification aspect, right? So in your business, it's so important to look at the two aspects. It's the magical, beautiful aspect and the purity that the eternal child, which is so important for those of you who are actual healers. So I know light worker is a generic term, but particularly when we are coming for purity, a place of purity and pure intent, and I believe a soul aligned spiritual business is a person that asks their soul and connects into their soul what they're here to do, rather than the ego, right? When we go for the ego and we go constantly just from mindset, I believe we're missing the point. You know, other people might feel different, but that's what I see. And I believe that anyone that's in the light work journey, it's so important that you connect in with what is guidance instead of, you know, allowing the ego. And what you're doing is connecting to that purity that a child comes in with, right? Because a child is more pure, and a child comes in and doesn't have all the distortions. The element is, but in a business there also has to be the adult aspect, right? The parent aspect, the aspect of where we own our gifts, we take responsibility. And if we want to have a successful soul-aligned spiritual business, there has to be both. So you have to be able to tap in to, and you want to obviously as much as you can bring the eternal child and even bring the creative child in, and that's one of the things a lot of people get stuck with their marketing, and they'll use it, they'll look at it as very adult, but I try and bring a creative element in it and help people see things from a different perspective and bring more fun. But it's still about a successful business, and it's not just about, I think everyone has a different description of what successful means to them. But if you want a healthy, sustainable business and a ethical business, if you do not address certain things, you end up having problems. Even businesses that grow very quickly, and they can look very good and financially on paper, but if they don't take responsibility, then they can struggle to cope with the demand because they've not put certain things into place. So I want you to consider the eternal child in your own business. Have you lost the eternal child? Is it still there? Or are you, sometimes in business what happens is, and I've been there myself, where you're in business so long, sometimes you start going down paths that become, I suppose it's old and stagnant, and you've lost the eternal child. You've lost that passion and purpose sometimes. Or as I said, for example, for me, avoiding doing my accounts, that was me, falling into that aspect where I'm not taking responsibility and not always, focusing on the things that needs to be done in a business. And we have to be honest with ourselves in a business, and particularly a spiritual business, because at the end of the day, as a spiritual business, people are kind of looking up to you, and no one needs to be perfect. None of us are perfect, right? Well, we're perfect on a spiritual level. I don't mean that, but what I mean is on a human level. Obviously, we are. Everything's growing and whatever. But what I mean is, when we are putting ourselves in the line as a spiritual business, at the end of the day, we're representing something. Sorry, my battery seems to be going. We're representing something that people are wanting and want to attain, right? So we have to evolve and grow and recognise where our vulnerabilities is. It's just part of it, right? So I would love to hear on the post some of the things that you might feel is, the part of your business where you feel that eternal child is really there, and aspects where you feel as if maybe I'm not taking full responsibility, maybe I'm playing, maybe I want to play too much, maybe I want to hide my head in the sand, or I want to be, maybe the victim aspect where, you're falling into victimhood in relation to your business. So it's so important for us to get the balance right. Okay, so I'm wishing you a great week. Normally I don't pop on on a Monday, really, because it's actually technically my day off, because I tend to work often at the weekends, well, even a Saturday, it depends, on a Friday night. So I hope you're all well. I'm wishing you a fabulous week, and just remember to keep the eternal child in your business. If you are struggling with any of these areas, now I normally do not, I do, it's mostly coaching programs that I do, but I'm in the middle of I'm considering actually opening the membership, the Spiritual Marketing Club membership again. And just between that, I am offering one-off coaching, which is more like a situation where you can get help to identify the main issue that's in your business that's stopping you going forward. If that's something you're interested, I'm happy to have a short discovery call or a little chat about where you're at and where to go forward. And you can book something, you can book a little session with me. But I have to be honest, I only have limited amount for one-to-one coaching and these sessions, because a lot of my other work takes up a lot of my time. Wishing you a beautiful week, and remember that an eternal child, the light and shadow aspect. Bye for now.